So I'm going to talk to you today about what if you knew the road ahead. So in 2015, an OECD report found out that out of the entire world, more than 50% of people would want to be their own boss or want to run their own company. Makes sense, right? I do like myself better than I like my boss. So it's possible that either you or the person sitting next to you would want to be your own boss. Well, the reality is very, very different. So it turns out that only 4% out of the world is one. 4. And out of this 4%, only 20% make it in year 1, and less than 50% make it after 5 years. So I think we have about 2,000 people in this room, so that's about 40. I think it's the first couple of rows here. So congratulations, you're a successful entrepreneur. The rest of you are losers. Can I see by a show of hands, how many of you work for a startup, started a company, or are self-employed? Can you raise your hand? Cluj is very entrepreneurial. So this is for you and everybody else in the room. 4% out of the entire world is a successful entrepreneur. So the question that I have is why some of us are successful and why some of us fail. And obviously, there's many, many reasons why some of us fail, and there's many reasons why some of us succeed. And when I ask entrepreneurs to reflect back and think about the journey and what are some of the questions they have, there's always a similar answer. And the answer is, I wish I knew what I got myself into. I wish I knew what that journey would look like. I really wish I knew what to expect. So what if you knew? What if you actually knew what to expect? So for the past 5 years, together with my colleague from MIT Sloan, Professor Charles Fine, we've been trying to answer these questions. And obviously, one cannot be prepared for answering all the questions, but what we realize is that this entrepreneurial journey looks very much like this picture that you see on the screen. So this journey starts a little bit with hiking through that, with trekking to that intense jungle. And then takes you up to a very, very steep mountain. And then if you're lucky to survive the jungle, and if you're lucky to survive the mountain, then you have to embrace and face the very wavy ocean where new threats and opportunities arise. And unless, I guess, you're Vladimir, this is a very, very hard mission for all of us, right? I don't think this journey is made for those who are not strong. And also think about who are the people that you want to bring with you? What kind of resources do you need for each of this step of the journey? So what we have realized after 5 years is that the entrepreneurial journey, this journey of developing from a small startup to a medium-sized company and then to a very large company, feels a little bit like this. Feels like nailing through the jungle with nothing but a machete, scaling up that mountain, and then sailing in the ocean. So allow me to start with the experience of hacking through the jungle. So can I see how many of you have ever been in a jungle before? So this is me in one of the jungles in Malaysia. I have to say, I really prefer urban jungles. I'm very much a city girl. I did this just because of research, and I hated every minute of it. Why is that? So I went through this. This is one of the oldest jungles in the world. It's very, very dense. It's very hot. It's very sticky. It's very humid. It's pretty dangerous. And actually, the guide that I had with me kept telling me, oh, don't touch that, you're gonna die. Don't eat that, you will die, and definitely do not bite that, you will die. So at some point I said, you know what? I'm famous enough. I don't need to die in the jungle for the name of research, so let's go. But then when I talk to entrepreneurs, I realize that when you start your company, very early on, when you start your company, it feels a little bit like going through the jungle with nothing but a machete, trying to hack your way through. And then I realized something else. Both the jungle and the startup world have one thing in common. In both environments, everyone wants to kill you, right? Everyone wants to eat you. The competition for resources, for food, for people, for energy, for money is very intense. So when I meet with entrepreneurs, I usually ask them, what do you take with you on this journey? So let me ask you now something else. How many of you have started a project from scratch, from zero, with no experience, nothing whatsoever? I would raise also my feet if I could, because do you remember the first time you had a new job, or the first time you cooked a meal, or the first time you asked somebody out? I don't know about you, but in my case, it was not pretty. It was messy, it was imperfect, I didn't know what I was doing, and actually it felt a little bit like going through the jungle with a machete. I just needed to get my way there. So what do we learn from the jungle experience as very early stage entrepreneurs? Well, there's many, many things, but because we only have limited time, let me focus on two today. So let's talk about resources, and then let's talk about people. So when you go in the jungle, what kind of resources do you need? I spent time talking to many brave entrepreneurs and jungle trekkers who said, the last thing you want to do, you don't want to carry too much with you. Even an entrepreneur, please don't waste your money on fancy offices, on expensive software, on spending your money on things you don't need now. And when I went in the jungle, as a city girl, I packed. And I had a tent, and I had mosquito repellent, and I had a moisturizer, and a shampoo, and a conditioner, and makeup, because I thought maybe Tarzan might be there, but it wasn't. And it turns out that my guide said, no, you have to leave everything in a hotel. The only thing you carry with you is what you need for subsistence, which is a little bit of water, not too much, because it turns out that it gets really heavy. And then this machete that, to be honest, it looks like something you find in a dumpster. It's the same thing with startups. Don't invest too early. Don't spend your time too early, because you know what's going to happen? You're going to pivot. You're going to constantly try to change. You're going to try to adapt. The environment is so dense. It's so hard to see. You don't need a GPS in the jungle because there's no path. You don't need a map because you are hacking your own way through. So what to keep in mind in terms of people? Well, it turns out that the jungle trackers are people who love risk. They love the adventure. They love to break rules. These are the people that naturally get attracted to startups. But guess what? These are also the people that are very hard to manage. I am one of them. So these people will actually see a problem, and they will fix that problem before their boss will tell them to fix it, because if in the jungle you wait for somebody to tell you what to do, it's too late. That tiger ate you, right? So in terms of people and resources, we tell our founders, I work with a lot of companies, to focus on these two things. Stay agile, stay lean, be frugal, stay hungry. Don't carry too much, because that burden is going to be too much. Focus on a very flat organizational structure, because if I have to wait for somebody to give me many layers of orders, I will not survive. Now, obviously, there's a lot of sexy talking about the lean startup, the agile startup, but the reality is that with everything that we know, we will still not survive, and very few make it out of the jungle. But for those of us who survive, let's start scaling. This is me in Switzerland, again, in the name of research. And then when I was trying to learn a little bit more about hiking, I realized that my personal experience of going up a mountain sounded very similar to a lot of the entrepreneurs that I talked to when they started growing their company a little bit. Actually, according to Forbes, only 1 out of 10 startups successfully survived the jungle. One of my MIT colleagues, Professor Bill Olet, used to say that the same behavior that made you successful in the jungle is going to be the same behavior that will kill you once you start hiking up that mountain. That's a very strong statement, right? So why do we think that is? Well, it turns out that the environment is very different. The kind of tools you need are very different, and the kind of people you need with you are quite different. Compared to trekking the jungle, going up the mountain feels a little bit more repetitive. You have to put one step ahead of the other, constantly keeping an eye on the horizon, which this time you get to see, as opposed to the jungle where you don't really see anything. But also you have to keep an eye on your growing team of people. This is where we see growing companies hiring more and more and more. Also, this is a journey very different than the one of the jungle that is very exciting and it's very risky and it's full of adrenaline. This is a little bit more a journey of discipline, of endurance, of trying to stay focused on a task that maybe is not that exciting. So again, what do we focus here? Let me again focus on the two things that we focused in the jungle: resources and people. If you've ever been on the mountain, you do realize that your backpack now allows you to carry more things. So this time, we do see the value of a map, the value of a GPS. This is where we tell business owners, yes, now it's time to have a solid business plan. The business plan that you have in the jungle is just an idea. I've never seen a company that used the business plan that they define in day 1 in day 100. This is where you start to see companies investing in automation, in optimization. And this is where you start to see companies that are hiring specialists. Because when you're in the jungle, you hire mostly generalists. You hire people who can hack their way through, who are rule breakers, but they don't really have a strong expertise. As we start scaling up the mountain, we start to hire people who know much better what they have to do, who like discipline, who like processes, who like a little bit more of a structure. So a very different environment than the one of the jungle, both in terms of people and in terms of resources. But you know what I found that is very interesting? Not everybody who survived the jungle, which is possibly one of the most intense environments, will survive the mountain. Because the mountain lacks a little bit of that excitement, business-wise, that the jungle has. So a lot of the scalers, a lot of the people who scale are very different than the people who nail it. But for those who survived, let's start sailing. I really love this expression. It's about 2,200 years old. Anyone can hold the helm when the sea is calm. So this stage usually comes much later, after a company has grown quite a lot. Think about companies like Apple, Microsoft, Toyota, etc. And the way we think about this stage is that these large companies are like big tank ships that are able to hold their course, even when the waters are very, very stormy. I used to have a student, he was a US Marine captain, probably the most disciplined people on this planet. And he used to say that life on a boat, life on a tank ship, is very, very different than anything you've seen before. Nobody moves until the captain says so. Everybody knows exactly what they are supposed to do. Everybody knows exactly what their role is. And a lot of these very, very large companies act like that. They have a lot of resources, they have a lot of specialists. However, what is it that they don't have? They don't have flexibility and speed. Right? If I am in the horizon and I see a threat coming towards me and I want to tilt the boat really rapidly, I actually might end up creating a tragedy. I might even end up creating a tsunami, for those of us who remember Nokia, for example. However, if you have a strong captain and a strong team of people, they will be able to maintain this growth and keep that company on a sustainable growing path. So let me conclude now and remind you that the way we think of the entrepreneurial journey is a journey that starts with the intimidating jungle, where you need very little in terms of sophistication of resources, but you need people who are risk takers, adventurers, slightly crazy, a bare machete, and if you make that out successfully, you're going to start scaling up that mountain with more discipline, more sophisticated resources. And if that becomes a successful story, then you get to end up sailing in the ocean, where even though you might see storms or sunny sails, together with a team of very disciplined, highly specialized people, you're going to be able to keep that boat afloat. The way we think about this framework, we think about it that first you have to nail it, so you have to scale it, and then you can sail it. So I'm going to end with another question. What if you took a chance and you joined this 4% of successful entrepreneurs in the world in your own journey of discovering the jungles, the mountains, and the oceans of entrepreneurship? Good luck and smooth sailing. Thank you very much. Thank you.